There is a deep loneliness hidden inside the human heart that very few people ever truly understand. A loneliness not created by the absence of relationships, or friendship, or society, but by something far more ancient and existential. Because, beloved ones, every human being enters life carrying an unconscious feeling of separation, a certain sense of being disconnected from existence itself, disconnected from truth, disconnected from the source of life. And because this separation feels painful, humanity spends entire lifetimes trying to escape it through ambition, romance, religion, entertainment, knowledge, power, distraction, and endless psychological movement. Yet no outer achievement ever completely dissolves the inner longing, because the longing itself is spiritual in nature. And this is why throughout history, human beings have searched not only for answers, but for living presence, for someone whose consciousness carries a certain silence, a certain depth, a certain flame, capable of awakening sleeping awareness in others. And this ancient phenomenon, beloved ones, is what has been called initiation, the sacred bond between seeker and master, between disciple and guru, between one who is asleep and one who has awakened enough to remind others of what is possible beyond unconsciousness. But listen very carefully, because humanity has misunderstood this relationship tremendously. Some reject it completely out of fear. Others become blindly dependent and lose themselves in worship. Both misunderstandings miss the deeper truth entirely. A true guru is not someone who gives you beliefs. A true guru is not someone who asks for your psychological slavery. A true guru is not someone who replaces your intelligence with obedience. The authentic master exists only to awaken your own consciousness, to help dissolve illusion, to become a mirror in which you may finally encounter your real being, beyond personality, beyond conditioning, beyond fear. Beloved ones, perhaps the first thing to understand deeply is that initiation is not primarily intellectual. Modern humanity worships information tremendously. People believe knowledge alone can transform consciousness. They read books endlessly, collect philosophies endlessly, memorize spiritual concepts endlessly, and yet inwardly remain unchanged. Because transformation does not happen through information alone. You can study love your entire life without ever truly loving. You can study meditation without ever tasting silence. You can discuss truth endlessly while remaining imprisoned inside ego completely. Information touches the mind. Initiation touches being itself. And this is why the presence of an awakened person has always carried tremendous significance in spiritual traditions throughout history. Not because truth belongs exclusively to certain individuals, but because consciousness is contagious. A deeply silent person affects others invisibly. A person established in awareness creates a certain field around him, a certain atmosphere, a certain fragrance of being that cannot be communicated merely through language. Have you not noticed, beloved ones, how some people exhaust you simply by their presence, while others create peace around them without effort? Consciousness communicates silently. Fear spreads silently. Anxiety spreads silently. Joy spreads silently. In the same way, awareness itself radiates silently, and initiation at its deepest level is participation in this transmission of consciousness. There is another dimension to this sacred bond, beloved ones, which modern humanity almost completely forgets. Because people have become so intellectually crowded that they no longer understand the mystery of transformation through presence. And this forgotten dimension is love. Not ordinary possessive love, not emotional dependency disguised as devotion, but a deeper communion in which the disciple begins trusting existence itself through the doorway of the Master's consciousness. Because the true Guru is not worshipped as personality, but recognized as a living reminder that awakening is possible. And this recognition creates tremendous movement within the seeker, because for the first time he encounters someone who is no longer completely hypnotized by the same fears dominating ordinary humanity. Someone who moves through life with a different quality of being, a different silence in the eyes, a different relationship with suffering, ambition, desire, and death itself. And beloved ones, this encounter shakes the foundations of unconscious living, because the disciple suddenly realizes that another way of existing is possible. That human consciousness need not remain trapped forever in anxiety, greed, comparison, loneliness, and endless psychological conflict. Before meeting awakened presence, spirituality remains theory. After encountering living awareness, spirituality becomes existential possibility. This is why initiation has always been sacred. Not because disciples become followers of personality cults, but because the sleeping consciousness begins sensing its own hidden potential reflected through another being. Have you noticed, beloved ones, how deeply human beings imitate one another unconsciously. A child learns fear from fearful parents. Anxiety spreads through societies invisibly. Anger spreads through crowds rapidly. Ambition spreads through culture continuously. Human beings absorb states of consciousness from one another all the time without realizing it. A fearful society creates fearful minds. A violent society creates violent psychology. In the same way, awareness also spreads silently. The disciple sitting near a truly awakened being slowly begins tasting moments of inner stillness simply through proximity, because consciousness is not isolated. Humanity imagines itself separate psychologically, but inwardly minds are constantly influencing one another like vibrations moving through air. Therefore, the presence of a master becomes tremendously transformative, because for perhaps the first time in life, the disciple enters an atmosphere not organized around egoic struggle continuously. Imagine someone who has lived only in noise suddenly entering deep silence. Initially, even silence feels strange. The nervous system resists because it has become addicted to disturbance. In the same way, when seekers encounter authentic stillness, something inside them becomes uncomfortable, because unconsciousness survives through movement, through distraction, through continuous mental occupation. The master's silence exposes this inner restlessness immediately. Beloved ones, the sacred bond of initiation is not based upon superiority and inferiority the way ordinary relationships often are. The master is not spiritually superior in the egoic sense. He is simply more awake. The difference is enormous. Superiority belongs to comparison. Awakening belongs to consciousness. A true guru does not secretly think, "I am better than you." Such thinking itself belongs to ego. The awakened person understands there is no separate self to glorify. He sees the disciple not as lesser, but as asleep potential, as consciousness temporarily lost in dream. Therefore, compassion arises naturally. The master helps not because he needs admiration, but because awareness overflows naturally into sharing. A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. In fact, beloved ones, this is one of the signs of authenticity. The true teacher does not become stronger through your dependence. He becomes joyful through your freedom. He wants you to awaken beyond him, not remain psychologically chained to him forever. But humanity repeatedly corrupts this sacred possibility, because the ego can turn even spirituality into possession. Some disciples become attached not to truth but to belonging. They seek identity through spiritual groups, the same way others seek identity through nationalism, religion, politics, or social status. Then discipleship becomes collective ego instead of transformation. People begin saying, "My Guru is greatest, my path is highest, my tradition is superior." And immediately the sacred disappears, because truth never strengthens division. Truth dissolves division. The awakened master continuously destroys identification, while unconscious followers often recreate identification around the master himself. This is why so many spiritual movements eventually become rigid institutions. Living truth becomes dead ideology, because the crowd prefers certainty over awareness. Awareness requires continuous aliveness. Ideology creates fixed psychological comfort. And beloved ones, the true Guru always threatens comfort, because awakening itself threatens unconscious security. There is also another danger humanity rarely understands. Many seekers secretly desire authority because freedom frightens them deeply. Freedom means responsibility. Freedom means awareness. Freedom means standing alone, inwardly, without psychological dependence. Therefore, some people approach gurus not to awaken, but to escape responsibility for their own consciousness. They want someone to tell them exactly how to live, what to believe, what decisions to make, how to think, whom to love, what truth is. But beloved ones, this is not discipleship, this is psychological slavery. The authentic master continuously pushes the disciple back toward his own awareness. He may guide, provoke, challenge, shock, or support, but he never replaces the disciple's consciousness with obedience. In fact, the true Guru destroys mechanical obedience, because mechanical obedience creates unconsciousness, not awakening. Look deeply into the ancient traditions of Zen, Sufism, Tantra, Taoism, and the great mystical streams throughout history, beloved ones, and you will notice something tremendously important. Authentic masters rarely gave fixed systems only. They gave presence. Sometimes a disciple awakened through silence, sometimes through paradox, sometimes through laughter, sometimes through love, sometimes through intense confrontation, sometimes through ordinary daily life observed consciously. Why? Because truth is alive. It cannot be reduced merely to doctrine. One disciple may require gentleness because fear dominates him. Another may require shock because laziness dominates him. Another may require silence because intellect dominates him. The master responds not according to ideology, but according to awareness of the individual consciousness before him. This is why real initiation cannot become standardized completely. It is living communion, not mechanical teaching. Beloved ones, perhaps one of the most beautiful dimensions of the Guru-disciple relationship is that it gradually teaches trust beyond personality. In ordinary relationships, people trust conditionally. I trust you if you satisfy my expectations. I trust you if you validate my identity. I trust you if you do not disturb my comfort. But the Master continuously disturbs comfort, because comfort maintains sleep. Therefore, deeper trust becomes necessary. The disciple begins learning how to remain open even when the ego feels challenged. And through this process, trust shifts slowly away from personality toward existence itself. The disciple realizes eventually that the Guru was never the final destination. The Guru was doorway. The Master points beyond himself continuously toward pure awareness. If the disciple becomes attached to the finger pointing at the moon, he misses the moon itself. And beloved ones, initiation often appears irrational to the ordinary mind, because the mind understands only transaction. Society asks, what practical benefit comes from sitting near a silent man? But existence contains dimensions beyond calculation. Music cannot be understood mathematically alone. Love cannot be reduced scientifically alone. Presence cannot be explained intellectually alone. The disciple may sit silently near the Master for years, and yet something invisible begins transforming gradually. Old fears weaken, inner noise softens, awareness deepens, not through argument only, but through certain attunement of consciousness itself. Humanity already understands this principle unconsciously in negative ways. Spend years around fearful people and fear enters you. Spend years around cynical people and cynicism enters you. Spend years around greedy minds and greed influences you. Why should awareness not also influence consciousness silently? Modern humanity has become deeply arrogant intellectually, beloved ones. People believe only what can be measured externally deserves respect. Therefore, initiation appears suspicious because its deepest dimensions are inward, subtle, existential. But the most important things in life have always been invisible. Consciousness itself cannot be held in the hand. Love cannot be weighed physically. Silence cannot be photographed. Truth cannot be purchased. Yet these invisible realities shape human existence more profoundly than material objects. The sacred bond of initiation belongs to this invisible realm. It is not contract. It is not social arrangement. It is resonance between consciousnesses. And beloved ones, there comes a moment in authentic discipleship when the outer guru becomes less important because the inner guru begins awakening. This is tremendously significant. The purpose of the external master is to awaken the witnessing consciousness already hidden within the disciple. Gradually, the disciple learns how to observe thoughts, emotions, fears, desires, identifications, without becoming completely trapped inside them. Awareness deepens, silence deepens, presence deepens. Then the disciple no longer depends psychologically upon constant external guidance because something inwardly has become alive. This is why the true master ultimately disappears as authority. He returns you to yourself, not the ego self, but the deeper consciousness beneath conditioning. Have you noticed, beloved ones, how rare it is for human beings to feel truly seen? Most relationships remain superficial because people interact through masks continuously. One mask speaks to another mask. Social identities communicate, while deeper being remains hidden. The disciple-master relationship becomes sacred, partly because for perhaps the first time, someone sees beyond personality into essence itself. The master sees your fear without condemning you. He sees your ego without hating you. He sees your unconsciousness while simultaneously seeing your hidden possibility for awakening. This kind of seeing transforms profoundly because ordinary society usually reinforces either shame or ego. The master reinforces awareness. And beloved ones, authentic initiation is not always gentle in the sentimental sense. Sometimes the master destroys illusions ruthlessly because compassion is not indulgence. If a disciple remains deeply attached to egoic fantasies, the master may shock him awake. Zen masters shouted, struck, laughed unexpectedly, destroyed conceptual certainty because the disciple's mind had become prison. Sufi masters created paradoxes to break rigid thinking. Mystics throughout history understood that consciousness trapped inside fixed identity cannot awaken through comfort alone. Humanity romanticizes spirituality, imagining only peace and sweetness, but real awakening feels like psychological earthquake because the false structure trembles continuously. Yet beneath all challenge there remains profound love. Not possessive love, not controlling love, but existential compassion. The master has walked through the darkness of unconsciousness himself. He understands fear because he has transcended fear. He understands ego because he has seen through ego. Therefore, he can guide others with patience impossible for ordinary relationships. Even when confronting the disciple sharply, the awakened being acts from awareness rather than anger. The difference is subtle but immense. Ordinary criticism wounds because it comes from ego attacking ego. The master's challenge liberates because it comes from consciousness serving awakening. Beloved ones, perhaps the greatest misunderstanding is that people imagine initiation means becoming somebody spiritually special. But true initiation moves in the opposite direction. It dissolves specialness. The disciple begins losing attachment to identity itself. He no longer seeks superiority through spirituality. He becomes simpler, more authentic, more ordinary in the deepest sense. Ego wants to become spiritually important. Awareness wants truth only. Therefore, authentic discipleship gradually removes layers of pretense. The disciple stops performing holiness and begins becoming real. And this is why initiation requires patience. Modern humanity wants instant enlightenment, the way it wants instant entertainment. But consciousness unfolds organically. The disciple must learn trust, observation, silence, surrender, awareness gradually. Old conditioning cannot disappear overnight because it has been reinforced for decades, perhaps lifetimes, psychologically. The Master provides not magical escape, but living support for this unfolding. Sometimes progress feels invisible. Sometimes confusion intensifies before clarity appears, because unconscious material surfaces into awareness. But if trust remains alive, transformation deepens slowly, like roots growing beneath earth, before the tree becomes visible above ground. Beloved ones, ultimately, the sacred bond of initiation is not about worshipping another human being. It is about awakening from psychological sleep. The Guru is valuable only because he reminds you of your own deepest possibility. Once awakening flowers fully, separation itself dissolves. Then disciple and master are not two. Consciousness recognizes itself everywhere. The outer relationship was temporary bridge toward inner realization. And perhaps this is why awakened beings often speak paradoxically about gurus. They say the guru is absolutely necessary, and then later they say no guru exists. Both statements contain truth at different stages. Before awakening, guidance may be essential, because the ego deceives itself endlessly. After awakening, one sees that existence itself was always the real Guru. The trees were teaching, Silence was teaching. Love was teaching. Suffering was teaching. Life itself was continuously guiding consciousness toward awareness. But beloved ones, until this realization becomes living truth within you, the presence of awakened consciousness can become tremendous grace. Not because someone else possesses truth for you, but because someone else may help you remember the truth already sleeping within your own being. Then initiation is no longer obedience. It becomes awakening. No longer dependence, but flowering. No longer worship of personality, but recognition of consciousness itself. Then the sacred bond between master and disciple becomes one of the most beautiful possibilities in human existence. A meeting between sleep and awakening, between fear and freedom, between ego and silence, between the restless mind and the infinite stillness waiting behind it. And through this mysterious communion, beloved ones, the seeker slowly disappears and awareness alone remains. And yet, beloved ones, something profoundly beautiful begins happening the moment authentic initiation becomes possible between seeker and master. Because for perhaps the very first time in the disciple's life, he encounters a relationship not based upon social performance, usefulness, ambition, fear, comparison, or psychological bargaining, but upon consciousness itself. And this creates an entirely different quality of human connection, one so rare that the modern mind almost cannot recognize it immediately, because society has trained people to believe that every relationship must serve egoic purposes in some way, either emotional security, social status, validation, possession, pleasure, control, identity, or ambition. But the sacred bond of initiation moves in a completely different direction altogether. Because the true master is not interested in strengthening your social identity. He is interested in dissolving the false center around which unconscious life revolves continuously. And naturally, this feels both beautiful and terrifying at the same time, because the disciple senses something his ordinary relationships never provided before. He is being seen beyond personality itself. Society relates to your mask. The master relates to your essence. Society asks, what have you achieved? What can you become? How valuable are you? The master asks, who are you before achievement? Who are you beneath ambition? Who are you when all masks fall away? And beloved ones, this question is tremendously dangerous to the ego, because the ego survives entirely through becoming. It lives in future identity. It feeds upon comparison and projection. Therefore, when someone looks at you without reinforcing your psychological performance, something begins trembling inwardly, because now there is nowhere to hide comfortably. Look deeply into ordinary human relationships, and you will notice how continuously people manipulate one another, unconsciously, through expectation, fear, guilt, praise, rejection, approval, and emotional dependency. Parents shape children according to social ideals. Lovers try subtly to possess one another. Friends reinforce mutual identities continuously. Society itself functions through invisible agreements about who people should be. Therefore, from childhood onward, the human being becomes divided between essence and personality. The essence remains natural, alive, spontaneous, fluid, like existence itself, while personality becomes constructed gradually through conditioning, imitation, fear, and social adaptation. The tragedy is that most people eventually forget the difference entirely. They begin believing the mask is the face. They identify so deeply with personality that the original innocence of being becomes buried underneath layers of psychological performance. And this is why the presence of a true master feels so transformative. For the first time, someone addresses not your social identity, but your sleeping consciousness. The Guru does not care about making you successful according to society's standards. He cares about awakening you from unconsciousness itself. And beloved ones, this changes the entire atmosphere of the relationship, because now there is no manipulation hidden underneath. The Master wants nothing from you except awareness itself. He is not trying to use you psychologically. He is trying to free you psychologically. This is why ancient traditions throughout history emphasized the mysterious significance of presence so deeply. Because transformation cannot happen through information alone. Modern humanity has become intoxicated with knowledge. People collect philosophies endlessly, memorize spiritual concepts endlessly, read scriptures endlessly, discuss enlightenment endlessly, and yet inwardly remain anxious, restless, jealous, ambitious, fearful, divided. Because intellectual accumulation does not necessarily transform consciousness. A man may study music his entire life and still never hear silence. A man may study love endlessly and still remain incapable of intimacy. Another may discuss meditation for decades while inwardly remaining trapped inside compulsive thinking continuously. Information changes the surface of the mind. Presence penetrates being itself. This is why, beloved ones, sitting silently near an awakened person has always been considered sacred in mystical traditions. Not because the Guru magically transfers truth mechanically, but because consciousness itself communicates invisibly beyond language. Have you not noticed how certain people create tension around them immediately, while others create relaxation without speaking? Some people carry fear-like atmosphere, others carry joy, others carry greed, anxiety, violence, sadness, restlessness. Human beings continuously affect one another energetically, whether consciously or unconsciously. In the same way, awakened awareness radiates silently. The disciple sitting near the master begins absorbing another possibility of being simply through exposure. Look at nature carefully, beloved ones. A candle lights another candle without losing its own flame. The second flame is not imitation, it is awakening. The first candle does not dominate the second candle, it simply shares fire. In the same way, initiation is not transfer of ideology, but awakening of consciousness. Truth cannot be owned. Awareness cannot become possession. The Guru merely ignites remembrance within the disciple. And because this process happens beyond intellect partly, ancient seekers often remained close to the master physically, meditating nearby, walking nearby, observing ordinary existence nearby, because slowly the unconscious rhythms of the ordinary egoic mind begin weakening in such an atmosphere. The disciple starts learning not only through teachings, but through silent observation. He sees how the awakened being listens. He sees how silence functions in him naturally. He notices absence of unnecessary conflict. He notices presence without effort. He notices a different relationship to fear, pleasure, ambition, praise, suffering, and death itself. And beloved ones, such seeing transforms far more deeply than conceptual instruction alone, because consciousness learns through resonance. But understand this very clearly, because many seekers become trapped here. Initiation is not imitation. This is tremendously important. The ego is extremely cunning and can transform spirituality itself into performance. A disciple may begin copying the master's voice, clothing, gestures, phrases, outer behavior, philosophy, facial expressions, style of speaking, and all this becomes deeply absurd because truth never flowers through imitation. Existence does not create copies. Every tree grows uniquely. Every river moves differently. Every flower opens according to its own nature. Why should awakening become mechanical repetition? Buddha flowered one way, Jesus another, Lao Tzu another, Kabir another. The awakened consciousness expresses itself uniquely through each human form, because existence loves diversity infinitely. Therefore, the authentic master destroys imitation continuously. because imitation strengthens false identity spiritually. The disciple begins feeling important through borrowed holiness rather than direct awareness. He becomes actor instead of seeker. And beloved ones, perhaps nothing is more dangerous on the spiritual path than unconscious imitation, because then one merely replaces worldly ego with his spiritual ego. The man who once said, "I am important because I am rich," now says, "I am important because I am spiritual." But the structure remains the same. This is why true masters often behave unpredictably, even paradoxically. They refuse becoming fixed ideals for imitation because they want disciples awake, not obediently repetitive. One moment, the master may appear gentle like flowing water. Another moment, fierce like thunder. One day silent, another day laughing, another day confronting illusion mercilessly. Why? Because living truth cannot become dead formula. The Guru responds according to consciousness, not according to ideology. One disciple may require compassion because fear dominates him. Another may require challenge because laziness dominates him. Another may require silence because intellect dominates him. Another may require shock because ego has become too rigid. Therefore, authentic initiation remains alive, fluid, existential. The master is not following a script. He is responding from awareness itself. Beloved ones, perhaps one of the greatest paradoxes of all is that the true Guru ultimately exists to make himself unnecessary. The false teacher wants followers forever because his ego feeds upon dependency. He needs worship, he needs authority, he needs identity through disciples. Therefore, he secretly weakens people inwardly while pretending to guide them spiritually. But the authentic master wants freedom for you. He wants awakening for you. His joy comes not through your obedience, but through your consciousness flowering independently. Therefore, initiation is successful only when dependence dissolves naturally into awareness. The disciple begins by leaning on the outer master because consciousness is still weak, still confused, still hypnotized by conditioning. But gradually, the disciple discovers his own inner witnessing, his own inner silence, his own direct relationship with truth. Then something beautiful happens. Gratitude remains immense, love remains immense, reverence remains immense, but clinging disappears. The disciple no longer needs psychological support continuously because now he stands rooted in awareness itself. And yet, beloved ones, The path toward this freedom often passes through tremendous inner upheaval, because the ego resists dissolution continuously. Humanity romanticizes spirituality as peaceful comfort, but real transformation often feels like inner earthquake, because the false structure trembles when truth approaches. A disciple may suddenly feel anger toward the master because hidden resistance surfaces. Another may feel deep attachment because old emotional wounds project themselves unconsciously. Another may feel jealousy, confusion, rebellion, fear, dependency, admiration, resentment. All hidden psychological material begins surfacing because the master functions like mirror. Ordinary life allows many unconscious patterns to remain hidden comfortably, because society itself reinforces unconsciousness collectively. But in the presence of awareness, hidden structures become visible painfully clearly. The disciple begins seeing his own ambition, fear, vanity, need for approval, emotional manipulation, insecurity, spiritual ego. And beloved ones, this clarity hurts initially, because illusion always feels safer than truth at first. Yet, without such seeing, transformation remains impossible. This is why initiation requires tremendous courage from the disciple. Humanity says it wants truth, but mostly it wants reassurance. The ego wants spirituality while remaining intact. It wants enlightenment as decoration. It wants meditation as self-improvement. It wants truth without inner depth. But authentic awakening demands dissolution of false identity. The old self cannot survive untouched. The masks must crack. The psychological defenses must soften. And naturally, fear arises because the ego interprets all transformation as threat. Therefore, sincerity becomes essential. The disciple must truly value awareness more than comfort. Otherwise, he will escape the process the moment discomfort appears. One of the rarest qualities in modern humanity, beloved ones, is receptivity. Society trains people to argue, compare, defend, compete, analyze, and assert continuously. The modern mind fears openness because openness feels vulnerable. People hide behind opinions, ideologies, intellectual certainty, sarcasm, emotional defenses. Very few know how to listen deeply without immediate reaction. Yet, initiation becomes possible only where receptivity flowers. Truth enters through openness, not arrogance. The closed mind cannot awaken because it already believes it knows. Therefore, humility becomes sacred on the spiritual path. Not humiliation, not self-condemnation, but simple honesty. The disciple quietly admits inwardly, I do not yet know myself completely. I do not yet see clearly. And this honesty creates space for awareness to enter. Beloved ones, the sacredness of initiation lies ultimately in love, but not ordinary possessive love. Ordinary love often contains hidden needs, control, expectation, fear of abandonment, emotional bargaining. The awakened master loves differently because he does not need anything psychologically from the disciple. He is not trying to own you. He is not trying to shape you according to social standards. He is not trying to create obedient personality. His love liberates because it gives space for your authentic consciousness to flower naturally. This is why many disciples experience immense healing simply through the Master's presence. For perhaps the first time in life, they feel accepted without performance. Society says, become this, achieve that, prove yourself. The Master says, become aware. Society strengthens ambition. The Master dissolves ambition. Society teaches comparison. The Master teaches presence. Society says your worth depends upon achievement. The Master points toward the intrinsic value of consciousness itself. And eventually, beloved ones, the disciple discovers the deepest secret of all. The outer guru was always pointing toward the inner guru. The true master exists within consciousness itself as awareness. The external teacher merely awakens remembrance. He shakes the sleeping mind. He points beyond illusion, but he cannot walk for you. He cannot breathe for you. He cannot become conscious for you. At some point, the disciple must stand alone inwardly, not isolated, but rooted in direct experience of being. Then the sacred bond fulfills itself completely. The disciple no longer follows mechanically. He sees directly. He no longer believes blindly. He knows inwardly. He no longer searches desperately outside himself, because the source begins revealing itself within consciousness itself. This is why authentic masters often appear contradictory to the logical mind. Sometimes compassionate, sometimes fierce, sometimes silent, sometimes shocking. Because their concern is not social comfort, but awakening. One disciple may need tenderness, another confrontation, one silence, another laughter, one discipline, another freedom. The awakened being responds according to existential necessity, not according to fixed ideology. Living truth cannot become mechanical methods, because consciousness itself is alive infinitely. Beloved ones, initiation ultimately means allowing consciousness to enter relationship with truth directly, whether through meditation, silence, existence itself, suffering, love, or living contact with awakened presence. The movement remains the same. The false begins dissolving, so the real may emerge. And whenever this process begins authentically, fear and beauty appear together. Fear because the ego senses its dominance weakening. Beauty because the soul senses freedom approaching. Then slowly something miraculous begins happening. The disciple stops seeking identity and begins seeking awareness. He stops collecting beliefs and begins observing directly. He stops worshipping personality and begins discovering prejudice. Then the relationship with the Guru changes completely. No longer authority, no longer dependency, no longer psychological need. Now it becomes communion, a silent recognition between consciousness and consciousness. Then the disciple understands something extraordinary. The true Guru was never trying to provide comfortable answers. The true Guru was trying to dissolve the questioner itself, trying to awaken the witness beyond ego, trying to reveal the silent awareness already present underneath all conditioning, fear, memory, and identity. And once this awareness flowers deeply enough, beloved ones, initiation fulfills its sacred purpose. The disciple no longer follows blindly. He sees. He no longer believes mechanically. He knows. He no longer searches desperately outside himself. He discovers the source within. Then the sacred bond becomes complete. Not because two personalities remain attached forever, but because separation itself begins dissolving. The disciple realizes that the consciousness he recognized in the master was always hidden within his own being. The Guru simply reminded him, like a mirror reflecting forgotten light, like a candle awakening another flame, like silence calling another silence home. And in that remembrance, beloved ones, true initiation is born. Not worship, not slavery, not dependence, but awakening. Pure awareness awakening itself through trust, love, vulnerability, and presence. When life itself becomes the Guru, every relationship becomes mirror. Every challenge becomes teaching. Every silence becomes meditation. Every moment becomes doorway into consciousness. And even if the outer master disappears physically, the inner flame continues burning eternally. Because now awareness itself has awakened within you. And that flame, beloved ones, is your true being, untouched by fear, untouched by identity, untouched by death itself, silent, infinite, watching through all forms, waiting patiently beneath all unconsciousness for the moment remembrance finally returns home.